Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, at the end of the day, stories are just at their best when they're honest. And if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you're in the seats with, once more, as always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of industry professionals and we pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more in a light and conversational fashion. And if you like how we do things around here, I'm going to assume that you do, because you're listening right now. You can subscribe. You can subscribe to the podcast. You can give us that big like and subscribe, or a 5-star rating, as it were. You can find us at Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google, basically wherever you get your podcasts. And also, we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, we would absolutely appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to follow us on social media. You can find us on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram at either at In the Seats or at It's Podcast One for all kind of updates. And finally, and I say this a lot, but it's the most important, please pay us a visit over at intheseats.ca for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, basically the moving image at large, because if we love to write about it and, well, watch it and write about it and talk about it, we love it when you come and read about it and listen about it. So please pay us a visit and stop on by. We got a good one on this episode, kids. It's a film called Run, Woman, Run, which is in theaters now, from writer-director Zoe Leigh Hopkins, and it's the story of Beck, a single mom who learns how to reclaim her dreams, her family, and honor her life, all thanks to an unlikely coach. It's a drama, it's a comedy, it's very honest, it deals with some issues that do go on in Indigenous communities, but it's very much just about a woman trying to get her life together, trying to get her act together, and through the simple act of running, which is more curative and amazing than you might think. But I mean, I don't speak from experience. I am not a runner, but I have run, and I do occasionally run. But you know, that's another story entirely. That's another podcast as for another day. But with this movie in theaters now, we want you to go see it. But first, I think you should sit down and listen to our talk with the writer-director of the film, Zoe Leigh Hopkins, and we talked about the origins of the story. We talked about just sort of the issues in and around the film, and sort of the inspiration therein, and just, you know, how running, you know, sort of that ideal of just sort of setting yourself to one simple task can really be life-changing. And even if it's something as simple as, you know, putting one foot in front of the other when we're on the road. And it can do some really amazing things, and this is a fun movie, and it's a relatable movie. I think it's one that audiences are really going to enjoy. But go see Run, Woman, Run. Check your local listings for showtimes. But first, check out our talk with Zoe Leigh Hopkins, because between you and me, it's a good one.
All right. Well, first off, obviously, just thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate this.
Thanks for having me.
Now, I mean, obviously, congrats on the movie. I guess my first question is just, I mean, I loved it, but I mean, walk me through sort of the origin of the story on your end.
So, Run, Woman, Run is about a woman who changes her life by becoming a runner, and she does that because she's inspired by the ghost of Tom Longboat to sort of get out of her rut, you know, and so she does that to get back to herself, you know, and become a language learner again. And I was really inspired about the concept of like how running can really transform your life by a friend who was running the Vancouver Marathon. And I stood at the finish line and I watched people cross the finish line. And I was really moved by watching all these perfect strangers do this incredible thing. And I was just like crying and watching all of these people and seeing them, you know, cross and then cry and then go into the arms of their family, or just like be a total champ and be like, yeah, that was like nothing, you know. And it was really amazing looking at all the kinds of people who were able to do that. And I thought, you know, a runner can look like anybody. I thought, you know, I had in my mind like some Olympic super athlete, but there was people of all ages and all body types and stuff. I was really, really inspired, you know, and my friend really transformed his life. And I thought that would be a really cool jumping off point, you know. And language is something that's really important to me. I learned my language, and I am not a runner, I should point out. immersion environment felt like a marathon, just because it was really hard. It was really intense, and I think involved a lot of the same hurdles, in terms of like getting over yourself and just committing to a wicked level of endurance. It was
For
really a tough
sure. Yeah,
movie.
yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Hmm.
and I mean, I think something I really appreciate about the film is that, I mean, obviously, you're telling a very sort of specific story, and you're dealing with issues that can happen inside the Indigenous community, but it didn't feel like we were being hammered over the head with it, or it wasn't being sort of happening in a very sort of way that maybe had been done in previous films. Like it felt very sort of honest and very sort of true, and very much more driven on the character. Like, how important was it for you for really to make this more of a character piece?
Um, I didn't set out to, make, a quote unquote relatable film, or, I'm not
Right.
trying to do like, oh, I need to serve a universal audience. I think you should never write from that standpoint. This was just a really, I just fell in love with Beck, and her sort of slacker vibe, and her, just like, I think we have echoes of her in all of us, and
For
just
sure.
certainly relate to her just being stuck, and whether that looks like she's on the couch eating a bowl of chips, or she's just like, yeah, I'll exercise tomorrow. I think that that's really relatable. And I'm a mom, and she's a mom, and I think she's a really good mom, and I think it's nice to see that. I think that some of these movies that are coming out right now, there's one literally called Bad Moms, and I think that that's funny, but I don't know. It's nice to see a depiction of a family that is really doing their best to care about each other. I
For
think we don't really
sure.
see
No,
that.
absolutely. I agree with you 100%. Now, I mean, talk to me a little bit about just casting this and finding your Beck, because I mean,
Mhm.
obviously, as a character, she's such a linchpin to the entire story.
Yeah, finding Dakota Ray Hebert to play Beck was, it was a bit of a search to find somebody who's so just really um, self-deprecating and hilarious, and can also be really emotional and go to the deep places. That's a really hard of things to do, and she really pulled it off. And I think when we found her, and I had done a search for Indigenous comedians, and watched some of her stand up, and I thought, oh, she's got kind of a really funny voice, and I really appreciated some of her humor. And so I asked her to read, and she just nailed it. And this is her first film, and you would never know, just from having worked with her and whatnot. I was really just impressed with her ability and her sensibility and her range, and I can't wait for her career to take off. And likewise, it was also such a treat to work with Siva Kustachin, who plays the ghost of Tom Longboat, and gave it such a charismatic and fun. Like he's not just a stoic old sage of a
Mm,
coach.
mm.
He's a real teasing kind of uncle spirit. I kind of think about him like that. So I really appreciated the magic that he gave that character.
Very cool. Now, I mean, do you think Dakota brought the
Hmm.
sarcasm, or do you think that was something that maybe you had already built into the character?
Yeah, like she gave what I had on the page, the voice that I had in my head, and hearing the words in reads or auditions, or just when we're reading the script out loud to just do some timing or testing or whatever. It's funny when it comes out of the wrong person's mouth, or isn't given the treatment that it needs. I found myself going like, oh, I thought what I wrote was funny, and it's not funny. But it was funny in my head. But when Dakota did it, I was like, okay, I was assured, like, okay, no, it was funny. So
No,
she
yeah,
definitely lent her vibe to it. But I think that was a definite collaboration between the words and the performer.
no. I mean, I'm curious from your perspective, because just in watching it, and I mean, I think you even mentioned this a little bit, just about the just seeing people cross the finish line at this marathon. What is it from your perspective about the act of running that feels so transformative? Because I mean, as an act, it's just such a simple thing, but really, it's so much more than that when you really sort of commit yourself to it.
I think what I like about running and just the concept of making a film about that is that it's really just a person in the road. There's no equipment, there's not really, although she does have a coach in the film, like you don't really need that. You can just actually decide, I'm going to put on some runners and I'm going to head out my door to go. You don't need a membership, you don't need, it's just, you can just decide to do that. And I really think that that's, in the end, what one has to do when we're going to change our life. You just have to decide, and commit to it. So I think it was really just about her making this decision every day. I'm going to change my life. And that's what I love about it, and sometimes I think maybe I'll try it. I did do it actually for a little bit. I made a short film called Mohawk Midnight Runners. And it was about this guy who was similar in that he took up running to change his life. And he did this concept of honor running, and that film is based on a short story by Richard Van Camp. And that story is called Dog Rib Midnight Runners, and that's based on a true story about a guy who committed to honor running, and he would run naked in the town after midnight. And people would see him streaking through town. And so I made a short film about that, about this guy that does that. And the concept of honor running, and committing your run to somebody in your life is something that Beck does in the film. But I tried it out, after I made Mohawk Midnight Runners, I showed it at a festival, and somebody came up to me and they had seen it twice in a year. And after they had seen it the first time, they're like, I quit drinking. I started running. I've been running every day since I've seen your film. And next week it will have been 365 days of running every day. Wow. And I was like, what? Because you saw my movie? And they're like, yeah, I just was really inspired. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I was so moved by the fact that, something I made moved somebody to do their, a total transformation like that. And so I was like, well, I'm going to join you on your year anniversary, and I will run, and I'm going to run for you. And I'm not a runner, so I did it. And, it really was a different experience running for somebody. And so I wrote her name on my arm, and I ran down my driveway and down to the end of the road where it dead ends where I live. I live on a dirt road. And I came back, and I realized when I got back, I didn't even stop running. And because I was thinking about her, every time it got hard, I thought about her, and I just said her name. And I got home and I looked it up, and that was 3 miles. And I was like, oh my gosh, I just ran 3 miles without, I never could have done that if I had just done it for myself, but I wanted to dedicate it to her, and I let her know, and I sent her some pictures, and she was really happy about that. And I was like, geez, she's done this 365 days in Ottawa, in, where it's 30 below sometimes in the winter. She did it when she was sick. She did it on the ice. She did it she just committed so hard, and she really changed her life. I was like, well, geez, I can do it for a month. So I did it for 30 days and honored somebody in my life every day. And then I was like, well, that was enough. But it was I wanted to do it for a month and set that goal for myself. And it was really, really nice. I never became a marathon runner or whatever. Sometimes I just did a big lap on my driveway, but it was something.
No, but that's a beautiful thing too. And I think that's part of this story as well, because in many ways we can all relate to sort of that moment where Beck is being sort of driven across the finish line, right? And just sort of having that sort of exhaustion and that tired moment and not wanting to do it. But when you have that sort of inspiration, it kind of takes your personal drive up to the next level. And I'm kind of curious for you, what are the kind of stories that sort of drive you to that next level to make you want to tell them? Because I go through your filmography, and there's always some little variations, some shifts. You're a hard filmmaker to sort of peg down, as it were.
That's nice to know.
I say that totally as a credit to you.
Yeah.
Totally, yeah.
Well, I think that there are some common threads in my work, in that I tend to work on stories that deal with family and community and some aspect of loss. Some kind of grief thread runs through a lot of my work. And I really enjoy working in the comedic space. I hope to do that more often. But I think that, I've tended to work entirely on Indigenous stories, and I think that that's where I'll remain. I have a hard time imagining that I would, work on a cop show or something. Like, I'm like, I don't really know. This is a lot of stress and time and away from my family, and if it doesn't tell something that's meaningful or put some good in the world, then I'm like, I don't know why I would work for 16 hours a day for months on end on something that I didn't care about.
Right.
So I gotta have something in it and tell something important. And I really think that this is a really powerful medium, and we can put some good in the world. And I think especially now, that we've lived through this 2-year craziness, and dealt with so much isolation and strife in the world. The thing that got me through our editing process, because we went into editing at the very beginning of the pandemic, and we had all of our footage, thankfully, and I had friends who went into editing and needed a couple more days of production, and then, you couldn't go and shoot. It was kind of a crazy time to be trying to finish a film, and it just felt so angsty in the world. And I just wondered, like, why am I sitting here in my office, like, editing remotely, and why am I making a movie? It just really felt tough to be creative when there was so much worry happening. But the thing that carried me through was that this is a story about hope, and this is a story about love and self-love, and about being grateful and being thankful for everything that we have and everything on the earth and in our lives. And I think the world was going through a time of reflection also, and like, what do we have to be grateful for? And like, when you're in isolation, like, geez, I wish I could see my family, or like, oh, thank God I have my family. It was just like going right down to basics. So that was the thing that carried me through, and so that'll be something to just remember as I work and take on more work that isn't mine. Like, this film was coming back to something that was only in my own head, whereas for a number of years I'd done commissions or was a hired gun, and maybe that's why some of my work is so varied. But yeah, this is the first time in a really long time where I've just been able to work on something that I made up entirely.
Plus, I've got to imagine doing ADR and editing over Zoom is just a creative bummer on so many different levels.
Oh my God. And like, it's only been in the past year where I've got faster internet. So in the beginning, because I live really rurally in Six Nations, and the internet at the beginning of the pandemic really sucked for us. So, and it was really the only option. So, when I could, I would go sit in the parking lot of a restaurant where the Wi-Fi might still be on and try to download files.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was really difficult. And then, it was not fun. And doing ADR remotely is possible. It's easier than editing, actually. But yeah, you can't hear the quality of the sound. You're just listening to your little earphones or whatever. You're like, I don't know, I trust you guys.
The trials and tribulations of independent filmmaking, especially during these days. And I mean, it really hit the past 2 years really has shown what a vital service sort of internet is really in this day and age. It's kind of amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah, when you're sitting in the McDonald's parking lot, trying to download a 20-second clip and it's taking 5 minutes, but
No, I mean, just to start putting a bow on this is something I always like to ask, but I'm always curious about what were the moment, maybe like what was the moments or the films in your life that made you want to be a storyteller?
There's some moments, like I was in that movie Black Robe.
Yeah.
Back in the day. I was 15 years old and was off school for 2 months to paddle canoes around and be on this big, huge set. And I had never experienced anything like that. And I just had so much fun. And it was such a great community of First Nations people from like all over Ontario and Quebec. And I just had a blast. Like, come on, putting on a costume every day and like hanging out and paddling around and eating lunch together and playing in the yard and whatnot. I just had a blast. And I just loved watching how all these cogs in this machine make a movie. And I just fell in love with the whole process. And 10-2 Cardinal one day was like, looked at me and she was like, oh no. Oh, girl, you got the bug. You're never getting out of this industry. And it was true. I never have. I've worked in it since then. So that was one moment. And then other little moments like I got to participate in the Sundance Filmmakers Labs and workshopped a screenplay there. And that was like Disneyland for somebody who's been to film school and studied the films of the people
Right.
who were there to mentor us, and was fangirling over people who were telling me advice about my scene or my script or whatever. Like Ed Harris was watching once, rehearsed
Oh
me with
wow.
my actors, and I was just like, I just can't even think this man is trying to tell me some advice, and I'm like, it's Ed Harris, it's Ed Harris. Ed Harris is telling me about my scene. And I was like, okay, stop it, pay attention. And yeah, just listening to these people, like the guy who wrote Philadelphia, like read a scene to me and was like crying, reading my scene. I was like, are you kidding me? Have you seen your movie? Like I ugly cried through that whole movie. I was just like, oh my goodness. So it's just these little moments of like a little boost that let you know that something you make can reach somebody. And I'm always amazed by that. And that feeling never goes away when you realize like, oh, you're sitting in a theater and a thing you wrote made people laugh. Like that's pretty cool to elicit these real human emotions. Cause like people don't laugh to be kind, like
Yeah.
it just, you can't, laughter doesn't lie, you just like, oh, that was genuinely funny, and that's pretty satisfying.
Well, you know what? I'm glad for one. I'm glad you got that bug, because I mean, I think this film is genuinely funny, but it's genuinely sweet, and it's a real human story too that I genuinely connected to and I absolutely loved. And just congrats on the work, and thank you so much for the time today.
Thank you so much for having me. Everyone go see the film. It's in theaters in a bunch of places, and if it's not at
Absolutely.
your theater,
Support
ask them to
Canadian
get it.
cinema. Absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah.
Thanks again, Zoe.
Great, thanks so much.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.